Have you ever felt that heaviness in your chest that seems to have no explanation? Or that emptiness that no achievement, money, or success can fill? If so, you're not alone. Millions of people around the world face emotional, physical, and spiritual challenges that seem impossible to overcome. But what if I told you that there was a simple, accessible, and powerful solution right at your fingertips? Imagine finding peace in the midst of chaos, healing for your deepest wounds, and strength to face the toughest days, all through a single practice. Yes, I'm talking about prayer. But it's not just any kind of prayer. It's a healing prayer that really works. A healing prayer capable of transforming your life from the inside out. And the best part? You don't have to wait weeks, months, or years to feel its effects. But here's something surprising. Many people pray, but few experience the true power of this connection with God. Why is that? Because praying isn't just about repeating pretty words. It's about opening your heart, surrendering your struggles, and allowing God to do His work. Today, you'll discover how a Christian prayer for peace can be the key to finding the serenity you're looking for. And you know what's even more incredible? This transformation doesn't require you to be religious or have advanced biblical knowledge. All you need is a sincere heart and a willingness to learn. Throughout this video, you'll be guided through inspiring stories, practical steps, and little-known secrets on how to pray with purpose and see real results. But before we go any further, I want to ask you a provocative question. What if the biggest obstacle standing between you and the peace you desire was just yourself? What if the answer was closer than you think? Stay with me until the end, because I'm going to show you how a simple prayer that works can change your life forever. When we talk about a prayer for healing, we're referring to something that transcends words simply spoken. It's like opening a window for divine light to enter our soul. People often think that praying is just repeating memorized phrases, but the real essence lies in sincere connection. Imagine someone who is carrying a heavy backpack, full of worries. A healing prayer is like putting that backpack down and letting God take care of it. Now think about how many times you've wished for something to change in your life. Maybe it's physical, emotional, or even financial pain. When it comes to a powerful prayer for healing, the secret is not in perfect words, but in total surrender to the Creator. Remember that time you asked a friend for help? It was that gesture of trust that made all the difference, right? It's the same here. There's even a reason why so many people seek biblical prayer for healing. The scriptures are full of examples of people who cried out to God and were restored. Take the case of Job, who lost everything, but found his strength again by surrendering completely. This proves that, regardless of the size of the problem, prayer has the power to bring renewal. But how does this apply to everyday life? Well, imagine starting your day with a simple prayer saying, "Lord, I commit my struggles and my dreams into your hands." It doesn't have to be long or elaborate. What's important is the heart behind it. And you know what's amazing? The more you practice it, the more natural it becomes. By the way, it's worth remembering that there is no magic formula for praying. Some prefer to read Bible verses before starting, while others simply say what they're feeling. What matters is that you are willing to listen too. After all, communication with God is a two-way street. Have you tried this today? Another interesting point is to realize how prayer can transform small moments in everyday life. For example, when you're stuck in traffic or facing a huge queue at the bank, instead of getting angry, you can take the opportunity to whisper a short prayer for healing. This simple habit can change your state of mind almost instantly. Finally, remember that prayer is not just about asking for things. It's about building a deep relationship with your Heavenly Father. And this relationship is the basis for finding peace and healing in all areas of life. But how can we apply this in a practical way in the chaos of everyday life? Living in the modern world is like sailing on a rough sea. Cell phone notifications, the demands of work, and even small daily worries can leave us completely exhausted. It is in this context that a prayer for peace becomes essential. After all, how can we find peace when everything seems to be spiraling out of control? The truth is that peace doesn't come from external circumstances, but from within ourselves. When you seek to find peace with God, you are creating a sacred space in your mind and heart. Imagine yourself sitting in a quiet garden where the noise of the world doesn't reach you. This sense of calm is possible even in the midst of chaos when you connect with the divine. A Christian prayer for peace is not just about asking for serenity. It's also about trusting that God is in control. Remember that time when something went wrong and you thought you'd never get over it? However, after praying and giving your anguish into God's hands, something surprising happened. It may not have been an immediate solution, but the weight began to lighten. To apply this in practice, try setting aside a few minutes every day to meditate on the verses in the Bible that talk about peace. Philippians 4:6-7, for example, teaches us not to worry about anything, but to present our petitions to God. In doing so, a peace that surpasses all understanding will guard our hearts. Wouldn't it be amazing to feel that on a daily basis? Another important point is to realize that peace doesn't mean the absence of problems. On the contrary, it is the presence of God in the midst of challenges. Someone facing a storm can still feel calm if they know they are safely in the right boat. In the same way, when you ask for a prayer for peace, you are choosing to trust that God is with you, regardless of the circumstances. And you know what's fascinating? The peace we find in God is not something we can keep to ourselves. It overflows and touches the people around us. For example, imagine that someone who is stressed at work receives a kind word or a gesture of patience from you. That's the transformative power of a Christian prayer for peace. It starts within us, but ends up impacting the world. But let's go further. What if I told you that there are simple ways to constantly cultivate this peace? You can start by practicing gratitude, even in difficult times. Make a list of 3 things you're grateful for today, and notice how it changes your perspective. Also, remember that prayer doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be sincere. But how do you deal with those days when you can't even formulate the words to pray? Emotional wounds are like invisible scars that we carry around with us. They can be caused by harsh words from someone close to us, a failed relationship, or even disappointment over unfulfilled dreams. When these wounds are left untreated, they begin to weigh more heavily than we realize. This is where a healing prayer comes in, like a restorative balm. We often try to deal with these pains on our own, as if hiding them would be enough to make them go away. But in fact, this only adds to the weight we carry. Imagine trying to walk with a backpack full of stones. The longer you carry it, the harder it is to take each step. A powerful prayer for healing is like putting your backpack down and allowing God to lighten it. The interesting thing is that many people underestimate the power of prayer in these moments. They think they need to be strong or solve everything themselves. However, the Bible is full of examples of people who cried out to God in the midst of their afflictions. Remember David, who wrote so many psalms venting his pain? He wasn't afraid to expose his weaknesses, knowing that God would hear his prayer for healing. You can do this too. To apply this in practice, try to take a moment of silence to talk honestly to God about your wounds. It doesn't have to be a formal prayer. Just say what you're feeling. If you don't know how to start, try something simple. Lord, I'm suffering. Help me to find healing. This sincere vulnerability is the first step towards restoration. Another important aspect is to realize that emotional healing doesn't usually happen overnight. Just as an injured muscle needs time and care to recover, our emotions also need patience. During this process, a daily prayer for strength can be your greatest ally. Ask God for the strength to face a new day, even if it brings back painful memories. And you know what else helps along the way? Learning to forgive. Holding on to hurt feelings is like embracing hot coals, thinking it will burn the other person. But it's you who gets burned. By praying for forgiveness, either for yourself or for someone who has hurt you, you make room for healing to come in. This doesn't mean justifying the mistake, but freeing yourself from it. Finally, remember that seeking emotional healing is not a sign of weakness, but of wisdom. Recognizing that we need help is the first step towards transforming our pain into strength. And as you learn to trust God to heal your wounds, perhaps another question will arise. How do you maintain this daily connection with Him without losing focus? Have you ever wondered why some prayers seem to transform lives, while others seem to have no effect? The answer lies less in the words we use and more in the way we connect with God. When we talk about a prayer that works, we're talking about something much bigger than simply asking. We're talking about aligning our faith with action. Imagine yourself holding a remote control that doesn't respond to the push of a button. If the batteries are low or inserted incorrectly, nothing happens. In the same way, when our faith is misaligned or our intentions are unclear, our prayer can seem ineffective. A powerful prayer for healing requires total surrender, absolute trust, and a willingness to act according to God's will. But here's a secret. The effectiveness of prayer doesn't depend on being perfect. God doesn't expect us to have all the answers before we cry out to Him. Remember the story of Anna in the Old Testament, who wept and prayed fervently for her son. She wasn't sure if she would be answered, but her sincere faith moved God's heart. This is the essence of a biblical prayer for healing. It starts with the heart, not with perfection. To apply this in practice, try doing a self-assessment before you pray. Ask yourself, am I really willing to give this request into God's hands regardless of the outcome? Sometimes we want God to do something, but we still try to control the outcome. Put that aside. Trust that He knows best. A good example is to start your prayers by saying, Lord, I put this in your hands. Do as you see fit. Another crucial point is to understand that a prayer that works usually requires patience. We live in a world of immediacy, where waiting seems almost an offense, but God works in His time, which is always perfect. While you wait, use this time to strengthen your faith. Read Bible passages about God's promises, such as Jeremiah 29:11, which reminds us that He has plans for peace and not for evil. And do you know what makes a prayer even more powerful? Gratitude. Even before you see the results, start thanking God for what He has already done in your life. This completely changes the energy of your prayer. For example, if you're asking for physical healing, give thanks for the small improvements you've already felt, or even for the ability to keep fighting. Gratitude opens doors that we didn't even know were locked. Finally, it's worth remembering that effective prayer is not just about receiving, but also about growing spiritually. Every time we pray in faith, we are allowing God to shape our character and bring us closer to Him. And as you learn to trust this process, another important question arises. How can we pray in a more practical and directed way on a daily basis? Praying with purpose is not something reserved only for great moments of crisis or need. It should be a daily practice that connects us deeply with God. When we talk about how to pray for healing or even a simple prayer for peace, the secret lies in praying with intention and clarity. But how can we do this in a practical and effective way? Let's explore a few steps that can transform your prayer experience. First, start by organizing your internal environment. If your mind is full of scattered thoughts, it will be difficult to concentrate in God's presence. A good example is to take a few minutes before you pray to take a deep breath. Close your eyes and imagine that you are entering a sacred space. This may seem simple, but it makes all the difference. Remember, God doesn't care about the place, but about the heart. So create that special moment just for Him. Another important step is to be specific when talking to God. Often we say generic things like, Lord, bless my life, without really detailing what we need. Try listing your concerns or requests before you pray. For example, if you are seeking a prayer for healing, be clear about which area of your life needs healing, emotional, physical, or spiritual. The more specific you are, the easier it will be to see God's hand at work. Also, don't underestimate the power of repetition. Some people think that repeating prayers is superficial, but the truth is that there is strength in persistence. Jesus Himself taught us this in the parable of the unjust judge, where the widow kept asking until her cause was heard. When you pray consistently for something, you are showing faith and trust that God will hear you. So insert this practice into your daily routine. Another crucial point is to combine your words with actions. A Christian prayer for peace gains even more strength when you decide to live in peace with the people around you. For example, if there's someone you're fighting with, take the initiative to restore that relationship. After all, God honors those who try to put into practice what they ask for in prayer. Wouldn't it be amazing to see how small practical changes can extend your moments of communion? And here's a valuable tip. Use the Bible as a guide for your prayers. Verses like Psalm 23 or Philippians 4:6-7 can serve as a model for structuring your petitions. By meditating on these words, you not only find inspiration, but also align your mind with God's will. Imagine starting your morning by reading one of these texts and then praying based on them. The impact can be surprising. Finally, remember that praying with purpose doesn't mean being perfect. We all stumble, lose focus, or get distracted. What matters is the sincere intention to seek God. Even on days when it seems difficult to find the right words, know that He understands your heart's desire. And as you learn to practice these steps, perhaps another question will arise. How can we be inspired by the stories of others who have experienced the power of prayer? Stories have a unique power to touch our lives, especially when they reflect divine intervention in times of pain or despair. When we talk about a prayer for healing or a Christian prayer for peace, it's often easier to understand their impact by hearing how other people have experienced miracles through prayer. These stories not only inspire, but also remind us that God is still in control. Think of the story of Corrie ten Boom, who survived the horrors of the concentration camps during the Second World War. Despite all the suffering, she found inner peace by trusting in God and praying constantly for strength and forgiveness. Her famous phrase, "There are no grudges in the heart of God," is a reminder that even chaos can be transformed into healing. That's the essence of a prayer that works. It can change not only your life, but also the way you see the world. Another impressive example is that of Nick Vujicic, who was born without arms and legs. In his darkest moments, he prayed for his existence to have meaning. Today, he is one of the most influential voices on faith and overcoming, showing that a powerful prayer for healing goes beyond the physical. It restores the soul. Imagine how profound this process must have been for him. And the best part? You can go through it too, regardless of the size of your challenge. But it's not just public figures who experience these miracles. Ordinary people, like you and me, also experience the power of prayer on a daily basis. Remember that time someone close to you faced a serious illness? Maybe it was an aunt, a friend, or even yourself. When you all cried out to God for healing, something extraordinary happened. Perhaps not exactly as you expected, but always present in some way. This proves that collective faith has a profound impact. These stories teach us something valuable, the importance of persevering even when answers are slow in coming. We often want quick solutions, but God works in layers. For example, imagine someone who prayed for years to find peace after a major disappointment. At first, nothing seemed to change, but gradually she began to feel an inexplicable calm emerge. That's the power of a daily prayer for strength. It builds invisible foundations that sustain our journey. And do you know what makes these stories even more special? They show us that God uses difficult situations to shape our character. That complicated relationship, that financial crisis, or even that fragile health can be opportunities disguised as growth. When you pray for the wisdom to see this, something magical happens. Your struggles start to make sense. Finally, stories like these remind us that we are not alone. Whether through a biblical prayer for healing or a simple heartfelt request for peace, God continues to answer the prayers of His children. And as you are inspired by these stories, another thought arises. How can we incorporate this same faith and practice into our daily routine, transforming small moments into profound connections with the divine? Incorporating daily prayer into your routine may seem like a challenge at first, but it's one of the most effective ways to keep your mind and spirit aligned with God. When we talk about a daily prayer for strength, we're talking about something that goes beyond a habit. We're talking about a gradual transformation that affects every aspect of your life. And the best part? This practice doesn't have to be complicated. Imagine starting your day with a short prayer while you brush your teeth or drink your coffee. It doesn't have to be long or elaborate. Just say something like, "Lord, guide me today and give me wisdom to face any challenge." This small gesture can completely change the energy of your day. After all, when you invite God to walk beside you from the start, it's easier to deal with the unexpected. A prayer for peace in these moments can be especially invigorating. But here's an interesting idea. Why not create triggers in your routine to remind you to pray? For example, every time you get into your car, use that moment to say a prayer for healing. If you're stuck in traffic, instead of getting angry, take the opportunity to whisper, "God, help me find calm right now." Over time, these little reminders become a natural part of your life, like breathing. Another important point is to realize that daily prayers don't just have to be about asking for things. They can be moments of gratitude, reflection, or even praise. Try to list 3 things you are grateful for at the end of the day. This not only strengthens your faith, but also changes your perspective on the challenges you face. Imagine looking back on a difficult day and realizing that even in it, God was present. That's the beauty of a Christian prayer for peace. And you know what else helps on this journey? Finding a specific space for your prayers. It could be a quiet corner of your home, with a comfortable chair, and maybe even a Bible by your side. When you dedicate a special place to talk to God, you create a sacred atmosphere that facilitates connection. Remember Moses going up the mountain to talk to God? Of course, we don't have to go that far, but having a personal mountain can make all the difference. Also, don't underestimate the power of consistency. Just as physical exercise strengthens the body, daily prayer strengthens the soul. Even on days when you're not feeling inspired, the simple fact of being present in God's presence works wonders. A powerful prayer for healing doesn't need to be perfect. It needs to be constant. And little by little, you'll see how this practice begins to transform your mindset and emotions. Finally, remember that incorporating daily prayer into your life isn't just about you. It's also about how you affect the world around you. When you live connected to God, your inner peace spills over to the people around you. Maybe it's a kind word at work, a gesture of patience with your children, or even a sincere smile to a stranger. This is proof that a prayer that works really works. It starts within you, but ends up touching lives beyond your imagination. We've reached the end of this video, but here's an important question. What will you do with everything you've learned today? The truth is that knowledge without action is like a stalled car. It may be amazing, but it's not going anywhere. So I challenge you to start now. Take a moment today, even if it's just 5 minutes, and say a prayer for healing. Pray with faith, with intention, and with total surrender. And see what happens. Remember all those inspiring stories we shared. They're not just examples. They can be your reflection in the future. Imagine looking back a few months from now and realizing that your emotional, physical, or spiritual struggles have been transformed by something as simple as a Christian prayer for peace. How about taking that first step today? And you know what? You don't have to do it alone. God is ready to walk beside you every step of the way. But He also puts people in your life to support you, and we're here for that. If this video was valuable to you, leave a comment sharing your experience or your favorite prayer. Your words may inspire someone who is struggling in the same way you were before watching this content. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We have much more content on how to strengthen your faith, find inner peace, and experience healing through prayer. We want to continue this journey with you because we believe that no one has to face their challenges alone. Before I close, I want to leave you with a final provocation. What if the greatest miracle you are looking for is already available to you, but it only depends on your choice? Choose to trust. Choose to pray. Choose to seek the peace that only God can offer. The next chapter of your story begins now, and we can't wait to see how it will be transformed.